Hey everybody, Black Bear Gaming back here. So we're going to do something a little bit different this time. Instead of doing a gameplay video, we're actually going to do a retrospect. We're going to take a look at The Walking Dead, the Telltale series. Some of my friends and I were sitting around the other night talking about whether or not, since Telltale has been bought out, whether or not we're going to see a season 5 of the Walking Dead series, either picking up with Clementine years down the road or with a new character, kind of like what they did with season 3. And one of my friends brought up an interesting point. He's under the assumption that Clementine is actually the angel of death. That everyone she came in contact with or her group came in contact eventually ended up dying in the series. So I decided to go ahead and break down all 4 seasons and take a look at exactly how many people actually did die that came in contact with Clementine or with her group. Now, I did not do 100 Days as part of this, and I did not do the Michonne spinoff, since I don't feel either one of those came in direct contact. We did break it down into the categories of dead, undead, alive, unknown, and determinate. Now, the unknowns we're going to consider alive because we actually don't know what happened to them, and the determinate is when in the game the player got to choose whether or not they live or died. So we're going to assume that you killed them. So we're going to count those as deaths for the purpose of this video. Don't forget to check out our Patreon account, $5 a month, get you qualified for giveaways and contests and all kinds of good stuff. So head on over there and take a look. Remember to like and subscribe, hit that notification button so you know when we drop new videos. Check us out on Twitch. We're usually streaming every night from 9 to 11 Eastern Standard Time. And of course, we are on X, formerly known as. Alright, so let's take a look at Season 1. So the first person we came in contact with was Lee, and anybody who played the first season knows that Lee was a determinate character. The game left it up to whether or not Clementine wanted to kill Lee to keep him from turning or leave him handcuffed to the radiator. We're going to assume that you killed him. So that is going to be the first confirmed death with Clementine. Alright, next we have Clementine's neighborhood. In her neighborhood, we met up with Andre, Chet, and Sandra. Andre was unknown at the end of the season, so we're going to assume that he survived. Chet was determinate, so we're going to assume that you killed Chet. And Sandra was confirmed dead. So out of the 3 she met up with in the neighborhood, only one survived. We next met up with the Green family. We met up with Herschel and Sean. Now, in the game, Herschel is unknown, but we know from the TV show that Herschel does end up dying, and since he did come in contact with Clementine and members of her group, we're going to count him as a death. And of course, Sean died on the farm. So out of the Green family, nobody survived. Alright, so we're going to look at Kenny's family. Of course, we have Kenny, we have Duck, and we have Katja. Now, Kenny was determinate. He did not die in the first season. We ended up getting to choose whether or not he lived or died farther into the story. But we're going to assume you put poor Kenny out of his misery. Same with Duck. After getting bit, it was left up to us whether or not to let him live and turn or to put him out of his misery. We went ahead and put him out of his misery, and of course, Katja died. She got bit by Duck. So, out of Kenny's family, nobody survived. Alright, so next we're going to take a look at Macon. In Macon, we met up with Beatrice and Irene. Neither one of them survived. Both are confirmed dead. Alright, so let's take a look at the pharmacy and the motel survivors. So we met up with Glenn, Doug, Carly, Lily, and Larry. Glenn's fate in the game was unknown, but again, we know from the Walking Dead TV show that Glenn doesn't live. So we're going to count him as dead because he did come in contact with Clem and her group. Both Doug and Carly are confirmed dead. Lily was determinate. We're going to assume that you killed her. And of course, Larry died. So out of the pharmacy motel survivors, no one survived. Alright, we got Robin Air Force next. We met up with Mark. Mark ended up becoming undead, so we're going to count him as dead. Nobody survived. Alright, next we have Ben's group. We met up with Ben, Travis, David, and Jenny. Out of this group, Ben, Travis, and David are all confirmed as dead. And Jenny ended up becoming undead. So out of Ben's group, no one survived. Alright, next up we have the St. John family. We met up with Terry, Andy, Danny, Brenda, and Mac. Terry was unknown, so we're going to assume that Terry survived. Andy and Danny were determinate, so we're going to assume that you killed them. Brenda ended up becoming undead, so we're going to count her as a death, and Mac also died. So out of the 5 for the St. John's family, only one survived. Alright, then we ran into the Save-A-Lot Bandits. We had Drew, Gary, Linda, Jake, and Bart. Drew and Gary were both determinate. We're going to assume that you killed them. Linda was confirmed dead. Jake was confirmed dead, and Bart was unknown. So we're going to assume Bart survived. So out of the 5 we met up with, 4 are confirmed dead. We then met up with the Rogue Bandits, Danielle and Jolene. Danielle's unknown, so we're going to assume that she survived. Jolene is dead, so one lived, one died. Alright, next we're going to take a look at the railroad. Old Chuck. Chuck didn't make it. Christina's family. We have Krista and Omed. Krista is unknown. We are going to assume that she lived. And of course, Omed died. So 1 for 1. Next, we're going to take a look at Georgia. We have Molly and we have Fievel. Molly's unknown. We're going to assume that she survived. And of course, we all know Fievel didn't make it. He was that little kid, I believe, trapped in the attic. Alright, so next up we have the Crawford residents. We have a total of 11. We have Anna, Oberson, Logan, Jeff, Walter, Langley, Bino, Herman, Banks, Lyons, and Shepard. So other than Ober, Logan, and Jeff, all the rest are unknown. So we are going to assume those 8 survived. Oberson, Logan, and Jeff were all confirmed dead. So I don't know what happened in Crawford. I guess Clementine and her group were slipping up a little bit, but they left 8 people alive. Cancer support group. We ran into 5. Clive, Joyce, Boyd, Vernon, and Bree. Clive and Joyce were both unknown, so we're going to assume that they survived. Boyd was determinate. We're going to assume that you killed them, and Vernon and Bree were both confirmed dead. All right, next up we have the Chapman's family. We have the stranger, Tess, Adam, and Elizabeth. The stranger was determinate, so we're going to assume that you killed him. Tess ended up being turned into the undead, so we're going to count her as dead. Adam was unknown. We're going to assume that he survived. And of course, Elizabeth died. So we're looking at 3 out of the 4 confirmed dead. Alright, so what was the death toll from season 1? Clementine and her group came in contact with 53 survivors. Out of those 53, 19 lived, 34 died. You had a survival rate of 36% if you met up with Clementine or anybody from her group. So that is a pretty low survival rate. Alright, so moving on to season 2. Our first encounter is the pit stop scavengers. We ran into Michelle, and Michelle didn't make it. So, first confirmed dead from the new season. Next, we ran into Roman's gang. We ran into Ralph, Victor, and Winston. Ralph is unknown. We're going to assume that he survived. Victor and Winston did not make it. So, out of the 3, only 1 survived. Next, we're going to look at the cabin group. And we have Luke. And unfortunately, if you played through the game, you know that poor Luke didn't make it. Alright, let's take a look at Sarah's family. We have Sarah and we have Carlos. Both Sarah and Carlos did not survive their interaction with Clementine or her group. And as a side note, I wasn't too heartbroken Sarah died. She was a little bit of an obnoxious character. Alright, Alvin's family. We have AJ, Rebecca, and Alvin. Now, AJ is the first person that is actually confirmed alive in this game and not unknown. We know that AJ does survive to the very end with the final season. Rebecca and Alvin didn't make it. So, out of Alvin's family, only 1 survived. Alright, next we got Nick's family. We have Nick and Pete. Neither one of them survived. Let's take a look at the Moonstar Lodge. We have Sarita, Walter, and Matthew. Sarita was a determinant, so we're going to assume that she didn't make it, and both Walter and Matthew also died. So out of the 3 we met up with there, all 3 are dead. Next up, we have Hal's Hardware, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to read through all 15, but Hank, Carver, and Troy, Reggie, Johnny, and George were all confirmed dead. The other 9 were unknown, so we are going to assume that they made it. Again, Clem and her group slipping up. They left 9 people alive. Alright, so let's take a look at Jane's family. We have Jane and we have Jamie. Jamie didn't make it. Jane was, again, determinate, so we're going to assume that you killed her, so nobody survived from Jane's family. Next up, we have the Sandusky family. We have Tamara and we have John. Tamara is unknown. We're going to assume that she survived, but John didn't make it. Next, we have the Russian group. I have to be honest, I don't remember the Russian group from playing this, but it's been a long time. But apparently, neither one of them survived. But for the life of me, I cannot remember these two characters from the game. So if you remember where they were, what the scene was, how it happened, drop a comment in the comment section for me. That way I don't have to go back through and replay the whole game to find these two. Alright, so let's take a look at Arvo's family. We ran into Arvo. He was unknown. We're going to assume that he survived. Natasha, she did not survive. We have Randy's family. We have Randy, Patricia, and Gil. We don't know the fate of either of these three, so we're going to assume that they all survived. Next up, we have the Wellington, Ohio. We ran into Edith, Frank, Nancy, Deb, and Dan. Edith was determinate, and we're going to assume you killed her. The other four were unknown, so we're going to assume that they survived. Season 2, we ran into 46 survivors, 20 lived, 26 died, for a survival rate of 43%. So more people seem to be surviving as we progress into the seasons. So we'll see if that trend holds. Alright, so next we have Season 3, or as they called it, A New Frontier. This was a little bit of a departure from the first two because this story really didn't focus all that heavily on Clementine. It revolved more around the Javier and his family, and yeah, really wasn't too fond of this one. But we're going to take a look at it. So, we have the Garcia family. Javier is confirmed alive. David, Gabrielle, and Kate were all determinate, so we're going to assume you killed them. And then the other four also are confirmed dead. Now, I know what you're going to say. They never came in contact with Clementine. However, Javier was part of Clementine's group, so therefore, by association, we're going to count them. All right, our next stop was Richmond, Virginia. We met up with Bob, Clinton, Joanne, and Paul. Clinton, Joanne, and Paul were determinate. We're going to assume you killed them, and of course, Bob died. We also met up with Lonnie, Max, Ava, and Badger. Lonnie and Max were also determinate. We're going to assume that you killed them. And Ava and Badger were also confirmed dead. We had Fern's family. Fern, Rufus, and Ida. Fern is confirmed alive. Rufus and Ida did not survive. Prescott, Virginia. We ran into Eleanor, Conrad, Tripp, Francine, and Eli. Out of those, Eleanor is confirmed alive. Conrad was determinate. We're going to assume that you killed him. And then the other three were also confirmed dead. And we have the kingdom. We ran into Jesus, and we know from the TV show, Jesus survives. So the death toll from the New Frontier, we met up with 25 survivors. 5 lived, 20 died. There was a 20% survival rate. So this by far is the worst season for survivors to live past meeting up with Clementine or anybody from her group. Alright, so the final season. The season that almost was never finished. Remember, Telltale Games went out of business right in the middle of this. But the creators of The Walking Dead stepped in and finished it up for us. Alright, so let's take a look. We have the Erickson Boarding School. So it looks like we came in contact with about 20 people here. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but I'm going to hit some highlights. So Willie, Omar, Ruby, and Azam, they are all confirmed having survived. Violet and Lewis, they're both determinate. However, one of these two survived because during the game you get to choose to enter into a relationship with Lewis or Violet or not. We're going to assume that you entered into a relationship with one or the other. So we're going to assume one of them is also alive while the other one's you killed. And then everybody else at the school, they're all dead. You wiped them all out. Good job. All right, then we have Tennessee's family. We have Tennessee, Minerva, and Sophie. So Tennessee is determinate. Although he's a small kid, we're going to assume you went ahead and killed him. So out of Tennessee's family, nobody survived. All right, next up is the Delta. We came in contact with 8 people. Armando and Michael are both determinate. We are going to assume that you killed them. So out of the 8, nobody survived. Next, we come in contact with the Whisperers, which was part of the decline on the TV show. Let's not lie. Things went downhill after Negan, and they just started stretching stuff out. Anyhow, we came in contact with 2, Charlie and James. Charlie's unknown, so we're going to assume they survived. James was determinate. We're going to assume you killed them. McCarroll Ranch came in contact with Rodney, Lloyd, and Helen. Rodney and Lloyd are both determinate. We're going to assume you killed them. And of course, you did kill Helen. So, Death Toll, Season 4. They came in contact with 36 survivors. 5 lived, 31 died. Gave us roughly a 14% survival rate. So, Season 1 was low. We peaked up a little bit, survival rate, Season 2, and then it just went downhill from there. All right, so let's recap. All right, so let's take a look at the grand total. Throughout all 4 seasons, you came in contact with 165 survivors. Out of the 165, 50 lived, 115 died. The survival rate was 31%. So, yeah, I guess you could make the argument that Clementine actually is the angel of death. Anybody, 115 people that came in contact with Clementine or Clementine's group died during the game. So, I guess my friend's right. Clementine is actually the angel of death.